Hi, everybody. It's your girl, Tawanda, your next big move catalyst. And you know what I do? I help entrepreneurs move from idea to implementation. So, what does that mean exactly? It simply means I help folks get stuff done. So, today, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the cost of doing favors and how to manage it in your business. So, I don't know if you guys know, but I am a project manager. So in my world, this is scope creep versus change management. So that's like the techie nerdy terms for it. But listen, doing favors in business is probably inevitable, right? Sometimes you're doing them because you absolutely want to do it, and sometimes you feel a little tricked and duped into doing them, and that's where the problem comes. No one ever wants to feel like they were tricked or forced into doing anything that they don't want to do, whether it's in their personal life or their business life. And when you're an entrepreneur, those two worlds often collide and coincide with each other, right? So what do you do and how do you manage it? Especially when you are in business and your clients are the one who keeps coming to you with and another thing, and another thing, and just one more thing. And I was thinking, and maybe if you just add and all of that, right? One or two times, it doesn't seem bad at all. You don't mind doing it. It only takes you another 5 or 10 minutes or so. You don't mind being nice to your clients, right? You like your clients. Otherwise, they wouldn't be your clients, because when you're in business for yourself, if the clients don't align with who you are and the kind of people you want to work with, that's the beauty of being able to say, hey, this is not a good fit for us. You can't really do that in corporate America like you can in entrepreneurship. But what do you do when you feel like people are taking advantage of you? Like, what does that mean? So one of the things you want to do is when you're creating your contracts, well, really, when you're creating your business structure, when you're creating your pricing structure, and you're creating, especially if you're doing project-based pricing, right? Did I say, hopefully I said project-based pricing. When you're doing project-based pricing, what you want to do is make sure that you are outlining all of the things that you will do at this particular price point, right? It's a little bit more difficult when you're doing time and materials, because people feel like, well, I'm just going to pay you for an extra hour. I'm going to pay you for extra 2 hours. And if that's what works for you, fine. But for project-based businesses, or even if it's a situation that you don't want to do said thing because that's not what you were hired or contracted to do, first you want to make sure that you've outlined what your services are. So it needs to be clear from the beginning. So probably from the proposal or pricing sheet, make sure that you're outlining exactly what it is you are going to do, how it is you're going to show up, what services and value you are going to provide at a certain price point. Okay. So outline then what times you are available, how you prefer to be communicated with. All of those things matter, because all these little things add up, right? And so a 2-minute conversation here, a 5-minute text here, a task that takes an additional 30 minutes there, a phone conversation that wasn't planned that took another hour. All that stuff adds up at the end of the project, and you have given away, hours of services, which could very well result into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of free labor, right? So we don't want to do that. So the first thing is make sure you're outlining from the beginning what people will get. So when you have that conversation and they're like, yes, I want to work with you, and you guys begin to outline what you're going to do, outline everything, what you're doing, how much time it's going to take. If you know what days you're going to work on stuff, do that. If you have a preferred method of communication, so if you don't like to talk on the phone, if you prefer everything to come in emails, so you can prioritize that, because phone conversations, conversations take up a whole bunch of time. And it's time that people don't really understand that it's billable. It is billable time unless you've built that in. So unless you've built in a whole bunch of chit chat time in your project schedule, you need to be mindful of how you want to communicate, what days you are not available, that you're not working. If you have to be available on those days, what the upcharge for that will be. Outline that from the initial conversation. Make sure you review that when you do your contracts. make sure that in your kickoff call, you guys talk about it again. Even if you feel like in your contract, you need to put an initial here so that they have to at least say that they saw it a second time or a third time or a fourth time, whatever it is you feel like you need to do. But first, make sure that it's outlined everywhere what is to be expected of you. Then you come through what we call change management. So this is if you want to make a change to any of this, if you want to do an addition to and replacement of subtraction, whatever change it is that you want to do, that change is going to cost you. You need to go ahead in the beginning before any feelings are come into place, because I know that sometimes we build these friendships with our clients and they become more of our friends, and that's when the lines get a little bit blurry. But before any of that comes into place, think about all of the things that they may then want in addition to, like, so then you have to go back to when I've managed a project like this in the past. People tend to ask for this, or I've had this particular suggestion, or anything like that. Think of those things. Put that in your contract so people understand. If you make any changes, this is the process we must go through for those requests. That every favor, every change, every additional idea you have has to go through a process, and that process has a price attached to it. You're doing this for a couple of reasons. I love all of my clients, past and present. I love them all. Everyone has taught me something. Everyone has brought value into my life. And I believe I have brought value to their life based on the information that they have shared with me. So even if we're not working together, I don't think I have any clients that we are not on great terms with. So, but you don't want to create a situation where at the end of the day, you're the one that is taking over the price of their new ideas, right? Because when you work with entrepreneurs, all of us have this great idea. And it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do this. So, I know I said I wanted to do it like this, but I was thinking last night and I want it to be bigger and better and extra. That's fine. Bigger, better, extra is fine if you have the money for bigger and better. And when you're thinking about, do you have the money for bigger and better? Do you have my money for me to execute bigger and better? So, you want people to think through these ideas, because a lot of times in entrepreneurship, we're having these bright ideas and we haven't thought through them. So we're talking to people and they're talking to their team, which is you, if you're providing a service. So they're talking to you, and they're talking to you in a way that it sounds like they want you to execute. When you come back and then say, hey, this right here is going to cost you X, Y, and Z, then that's when they can say, oh, no, I was just thinking out loud. I didn't mean for you to do it. Because if you go ahead and execute without getting the formal okay that this is going to cost them additional money, you're going to have to eat that cost, because they didn't agree to paying you anything other than what you all had already agreed to. Okay. And so even if your time and materials, that's when the discrepancy of how much time they thought something was going to take versus how much time something actually took. Oftentimes it's due to the changes that they are having. So even if you're a graphic designer and, you want to go ahead and say you get 2 revisions or 4 revisions, because if you don't, what'll happen is they're going to look at it the one time and they're going to send you a revision, and they were then just looking at it fly by night. And then the next day they're looking at it and they were like, oh my gosh, I want you to change something else. And at that point in time, they send it to another business friend or colleague or somebody like that. That person has given them some additional suggestions. And now all of these extra changes are coming through when they could have sent you one email with all of the changes they wanted. Instead, now they're sending you, 6 or 7 different change requests, not understanding all of the time that's associated with that. They're still going to want you to hit your deliverable time, right? Even though they're giving you all of these changes, they still want you to be on time with what you promised. So making it clear in the beginning, hey, this change is going to cost you. Now, also be aware, especially when you're doing project-based, that changes will, and this is for project managers, but even if you're not a project manager and you are, the CEO of your company and you're running, all of your projects, understand that every change in a project will probably affect your project schedule. So if a project being complete on a certain day is extremely important to you for whatever reason, please understand that last minute changes or even early changes, depending on what those changes are, changes the timeline of the project. And that is why you also want to make sure that people are signing off on these changes that they are asking for. So a part of the process should be that the change has to go through, there has to be a formal request for a change. So not just a phone conversation about it. This then makes sure that it is not just something they're just brainstorming with you about, but that there's an official form that's possibly filled out or an email that has to be sent. You have to give it a certain amount of days to respond. So maybe you have a 2 business day response. Respond with, this is how much this change is going to cost, because this change is going to take X amount of time, X amount of resources, if there's something else that is required. So, if it's, I'm adding, I decided that at my event, I want to have programs, and that wasn't in the mix in the beginning, right? So the time for you to figure out who's going to do it, the time that it's going to take to figure out where it's going to be printed, and then the cost of the person who's going to do the design, the cost of printing, all of that. And then if that pushes anything back, however it's going to affect the timeline also needs to be explained before moving forward with it, okay? So I know that I get caught sometimes because I do some techie things, right? And so sometimes people may say, hey, I want this automation sequence in my business. I want to make sure that this checklist is delivered in this manner, and then all these other things happen behind the scenes, right? And that's fine if I've created a project schedule for that. But then if you go in and say, you know what, I decided I'm going to add a whole nother thing to this automation, to this funnel, or whatever you want to call it. I'm adding something else. Okay. I told you it's going to take me a week to get this done based on the information that was provided. However, now that you've added this extra thing into the mix, this extra thing comes with this particular price tag, and this will then push your project out by X amount of days. And then make sure that that person is okay with that. Depending on your relationship with said client, you may want to go ahead and get the change payment ahead of time. I mean, there's a whole process to managing scope creep and change management, but I wanted to make sure that as we are always thinking through our pricing structures, how we're communicating our pricing to our clients, that we're thinking through these things, that we're not waiting until the last minute. So for me, what I would suggest is, especially if you're a project-based, service-based business, and you're doing project-based pricing, I would go ahead, even with the packages and services I already have, think through that even if it's just a mental note, that changes to this project or anything in addition to comes at a extra $100 rate, $100 hour rate. Just have those things in mind so that when it's time for you to create your personalized project proposals for clients, you have the information handy, that you are making informed decisions, that you are sharing information with them that is consistent with your brand, consistent with the things that you are sharing across the board. So those are my tips as it comes to the cost of doing favors in your business. So just be mindful of that. Be mindful of, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, you know what, can you pick up the phone? Let me talk to you about this. Or you see your emails and inbox messages and all those things going off, and you're answering them. But all these 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, all of those things add up to a whole bunch of freebies that you probably have not planned for. So as you are evaluating the pricing structure in your business, and if you're seeing if it's time to give yourself a raise, I'm going to suggest that you check out my free Pricing for Profits checklist. The information on how to get it should be scrolling across the bottom of the screen right about now after I do a little bit of editing. So until next time, I am wishing everyone a productive and profitable day.